Welcome back, everyone, to The Day with Trae. I'm your host, TraeAnna Holiday. Joining me right now is licensed psychologist, Dr. Jennifer Chain. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Now, this is a first for me, and so before we get into it, psychology is very serious. That's the way that I see it, right? It's like
yes.
it's talking about the understanding of the brain, how the brain works, and there's so many different facets of it. What got you to say that you needed to be in this field?
That's a great question. I also like to think about psychology. The root of the word is psycheology, right? Which is the study of the soul. So it's not just about the brain, right? It's really about who we are as human beings and the wholeness of who we are. So what got me into it? I do want to start with a story, right? So some of that has to do with being a child of an immigrant, right? Or immigrants, and being the firstborn daughter in a Chinese family. There is a lot of upbringing in terms of cultural and also contextual situations that really taught me how to be really responsible, how to be an overachiever, right? How to be perfect in so many ways. That's how you survive as an immigrant. And it's also how my family, right, really needed that from me as the firstborn daughter. When my little sister was 10 years younger than me, I really had to be in many ways like a second parent to her, right? So all of that, the immigration experience, coming into the United States, learning a different language, all of that got me really curious about why people are so resilient, right? Why people are so able to overcome these incredible challenges in their lives. And so that made me start to ask that question of what is resilience and what are some of the factors that really contribute to that? And that got me interested in psychology, and then the path really continued from there.
Well, there's so much that's taught in the Western world about, clinical psychology. When I think about, I'm grateful because in the community, I'm starting to see a lot of, ancient traditions kind of coming back for us to understand exactly that connection that you made. So I'm glad you made the connection of like the psyche to the soul, the understanding of that being such a major essence of who we actually are, but tapping in a way that allows people to understand maybe how we understood it before, Western science necessarily. But there's a lot here. What are some of the things that you find in your practice become some of the major nodes of the work you're doing and how you're helping your clients?
Yeah, I really love what you're saying about us really remembering some of our ancient traditions, right? And remembering our heritage. I feel like science is just catching up to what the traditions and the indigenous knowledge we already have, right? It's just starting to prove that, oh yes, that was right all along, right? And so I do think that in my work, and I think in the work of many therapists, it is about remembering that we do have this innate knowledge and also this knowledge from our ancestors, right? And that healing is within us. It's not something that we seek outside. And I really think that the role of a therapist is a guide, right? In many other generations, we might have called them shamans or healers or witches, right? We call them different things, but the role of a therapist today is really a guide, helping people see deeper into themselves, helping them find the medicine that's already there, right? Medicine that they already know, medicine from their family, medicine from their culture. So it's really not us imparting any sort of healing onto our clients, right? It's really about finding that. But I also really love what you're saying about the search for what is already in our history and background in terms of medicine. I know that there's a lot of new medicine that's coming forward in terms of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, but really now I'm really excited about the new wave of medicine that's about psychedelics, right? That is traditional use of ayahuasca and mushrooms, and that field has always been with us, and we're really now seeing, just another example, we're really seeing what we've known, what a lot of indigenous practices have already known for a really long time, that is healing.
This is, I'm geeking out because, the reading so much about this, reintroducing. I love what you said, remembering, right? So the reintroduction of psychedelics when it comes to kind of medical practice, and especially some of the amazing data that's kind of been showcased around, you know, recovery or leaving drugs behind, and really being able to like get yourself to a place where you feel whole again, and you don't need those substances to aid you in that path is so key. And I think about just how we are in such a need in society for us to have that understanding and to tap back into these natural sources within us. You know, I'm one who studies comedic science. So when to hear you say this is like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what is needed for so many people to understand. And I have been able to be a recipient of like traditional Chinese medicine, like herbs, going back to things like that were like, oh my gosh, that's dealing with my, you know, not only my physical health, but my mental health. And so I love seeing that people are starting to gravitate more to things that are holistic and less of, you know, well, I gotta get this prescription because that's what they said. So I love that people are getting those second opinions. But it sounds like you're really all the way with it. So that's beautiful to hear. You know, thinking about this act of overgiving. This is something that I know for me, I see a void, I want to fill it. And sometimes people are like, but are you like giving from a depleted cup? And it was something that awakened my mind around, wait, I don't know if I do enough of checking in on myself, trying to fill the voids that I see, or trying to make sure I'm helping others. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah. And this is also, you know, harkens back to some of my history and my own experience growing up, being the helper, right? And being praised a lot for being really helpful and really good at it, and seeing that need and rushing in and filling it, right? And I think as women of color, I think that's really well trained in us. We get really good at it, right? And we succeed because of it too, right? So there's so much reinforcement. But I think one of the models that I really like actually comes from Stephen Cartman, who came up with this model back in the 60s. It is called the drama triangle. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
Okay. It's called the drama triangle because it creates a lot of drama, but also if you were to see this drama played out in a lot of our TV shows, reality shows, you know, movies, you can see the model really clearly. So the drama triangle is, there are these three roles that we all play at some point, and they're really interlocked with each other, right? So there's the role of the persecutor, and there's the role of the victim, and then there's the role of the rescuer, right? And another way you can also see this as there's a role of the hero, there's a role of the villain, and then there's also the role of the victim, right? And you see that drama triangle all the time in our shows, in our movies, in our storytelling, right? And what happens with each of these three roles is that they all need each other, right? I think the Joker at one point told Batman, like, you need me, right?
Yeah.
You need a villain in your story, otherwise you don't have a role to play. The problem with all of these three roles is that it locks these folks in, right, into a very disempowered place. So the persecutor with the villain in this case, right, their role to play is that they're generally more, complaining about what's wrong with the world, right? They tend to be very aggressive toward other people, right? Want to put others down because there's a lot of anger and rage within themselves, right? So that's the persecutor. The victim oftentimes is the victim, right? They are the one who's on the receiving end of a lot of that victimization, that aggression, and that anger, right? So there's the victim. But the victim, the trick to their role is that then they are not able to do something about their lives, right? They feel really disempowered. And then there's a third role, which is the rescuer or the hero, who really wants to come in and rescue the victim, right? So they feel in that way very compelled to do something about what they see as a need, right? And what they see is the disadvantaged. But the problem with the hero or the rescuer is that they then neglect themselves. They oftentimes, right, don't focus on their own need because they're so busy trying to rescue somebody else. Yeah. And so the thing about these three roles is that we all play them, and we can also switch around them in like a minute, right? And so if somebody is being a persecutor, right, then it pulls us either to be the victim or to be the rescuer in that moment, right? So if we are sometimes playing the persecutor role, it also pulls other people to want to either attack us or sort of fight us, right, or feel disempowered with us in that moment. So it's an interesting trap that we kind of get into.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really, you live it and you don't get to sit back and analyze it enough to kind of make those connections. But it's so true and it's so real. And I think, there's probably roles that you play more dominantly because I also think there's something to be said about how you cultivate responses to everyday challenges in your life. And you tend to draw, things that either provide comfort or that become normal for you, right? And so this is really intriguing for me because it is allowing me to think about some of the ways that I have stepped in to try to be that hero, shero, right?
Yes.
And really over time, I realized like there's a depletion too for me that if I don't allow myself to step out of that role, I don't get it filled, right? So what are some of the things that folks can do when they begin to recognize whatever role they're playing, and especially if one is more dominant than the other? Because I hear the term, and I have used it before, about, people being a victim, like you're constantly victimizing yourself. And I've lived with, people around me that I felt like that was their go-to, like their go-to method. What kind of things can we do to kind of shake ourselves up out of this?
Yeah. Part of that is, for one, like you said, for us to recognize that we're in one of those roles, right? That we're playing that now. Yeah, and I like the word playing because it's as we're acting in that role, but we can step out of it if we need to and want to. Yeah. So recognizing which role I might be playing in this moment, and then also start to take accountability, because all three of the roles feel disempowered, right? They all feel really stuck. And so to take some accountability for your own need in that moment. The focus in my practice, right, is really helping those who are the helpers and the givers and the fixers, right? So they are the rescuers, oftentimes they're the hero of the story. However, they have a hard time taking accountability of the fact that they're neglecting themselves. And there's there's a secret wish in the hero. There's a secret wish in the rescuer, which is that if I can just rescue the victim enough, then maybe one day the victim will be able to come back and fulfill my need. That's the wish, right? Yeah. But unfortunately, what we know and what you probably have experienced over and over again is that the more you rescue, right? Like it's a never-ending dynamic. And so I like to think about it as there are those who are overtakers, and then there are those who are overgivers. And we can't expect, unfortunately, the overtakers to stop overtaking because the situation is working really well for them, right? And they also tend to not have a lot of insight, and they also tend to not come to therapy. So those who are overgivers, right, it is really up to them sometimes to learn how to set those boundaries, to learn how to value themselves, to learn how to only serve from a place of overflow and not from a place of martyrdom. Right? So those are some of the things that I really help my clients see, and then also help them step into that empowerment. And we oftentimes think empowerment is sort of stepping in and being more aggressive, right? But that's kind of stepping into the persecutor role, stepping into almost a bit of that villain, that blaming role. Right? That's not true empowerment. True empowerment is really taking accountability for our lives, knowing that we have choices at any point. Right? That there are lots of decisions that we get to make about our lives and how we live it. That's really empowerment.
Y'all, I didn't know that this episode was going to end up being a whole therapy session for you, girl. But this is so true. And as you're talking, I'm just reliving scenarios in my life that really play this out. And it's interesting because you're so right about the fact that we think that the overtaker will eventually understand wait a minute, this overgiver is always giving to me, and I need to in turn give back to them.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, you just blew me away with that one. I'm like, that's 100% on a spot on. So I love this, the idea of setting boundaries. And it's so great because someone I just love in my life has always been like, hey, how are you doing? And I'm going to be here to hold you accountable to setting your boundaries. So this is beautiful. Dr. Trae, I just can't thank you enough for being here today. Of course, I got to give you some time because, you know, others may be feeling like me and like, we need to book with Dr. Trae. Look right here. Let us know how we stay connected to you, or maybe become someone who can get some help from you.
Sure, thank you. So I am actually the owner of a group practice, and I don't take as many clients anymore at this point because I'm really focused on running the group practice, but I have some amazing therapists at my group practice, and our website is thriveforthepeople.com, and you can also find us on Instagram at thriveforthepeople.com. And I also wonder if I can announce a couple of exciting things that are happening for us as well. So along this theme of working with the helpers and the givers, we also have an exciting live event that's happening on June 28th. We want to highlight some women and LGBTQ and BIPOC leaders in our community. So we're doing a live event actually right down the street in Pioneer Square. And we're actually featuring, our first speaker is going to be the youngest restaurateur here in Seattle. And her name is Michaela Benedict. And she's going to be talking about how it is for her as a woman and as a really young woman in her field, leading the field and breaking some barriers.
So I guess we can get the information on your website.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Dr. Trae, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your gift and your insight with me, first off, with me today, and of course with everyone else. I'm looking forward to continuing to build a relationship with you. It's so great to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
Wow. Y'all, I'm telling you, I'm going to wrap up all of this amazingness right after this short break. Stay tuned. You're watching A Day with Trae.